to sell her progressive policies to voters as a whole. She'll also be defending her previous calls to abolish prisons and defund the police, as well as the massive fraud that took place in Minnesota during her nearly 8 years as lieutenant governor. Here's Tafoya last night ahead of the polls closing.
Every voter I talk to is angry because the state is traveling about 100 miles per hour in the wrong direction. Where has that left us? Embarrassed. $9 billion poorer thanks to that fraud. Crime rates up, test scores down. Why would anyone think that reelecting either of those women was the answer?
So there you have Michelle Tafoya. I am so excited for the possibility that Michelle Tafoya might end up in the United States Senate. And you know what I hear from people that understand these types of things is they're saying there's a chance. Let's get to our next guest. Excited to have Dustin Grage on the Annie Frey Show, Minnesota-based columnist for Town Hall, providing political analysis, and research. And of course, at Grage Justin on X, Grage Dustin. Welcome back to the show, Dustin. I was thinking about you on Tuesday, and I feel like you had a pretty good night.
I had a great night, personally. I ended up calling all of the executive races correctly, as well as all of the local races in the state. Had a 100% record on all of it. So apparently the receipts were accurate throughout the night.
That's right. So let's talk first, since we were listening to Michelle Tafoya there, about that Senate race. I don't think that the Minnesota Senate seat has been calculated in the past as a purple, maybe even red seat. It's one that I think the parties expect to be blue. You throw a toss-up race there, or maybe even a flip possibility, and the whole map starts looking at Minnesota.
Yeah, and Tim Scott has actually already come out in front of this NRSC chairman who's in charge of looking at the map and seeing what's a possibility. He thinks we have a possibility in a map to 54 seats in the Senate.
Woo!
And he specifically names Minnesota and Michelle Tafoya as the opportunity here. And this, keep in mind, Annie, this was before Angie Craig lost this primary to Peggy Flanagan. Now, who is Peggy Flanagan? We heard a little bit of an excerpt before that, but Peggy Flanagan is the individual that was added to Tim Walz's gubernatorial ticket in 2017 because he was viewed as too squishy and moderate for Democrat voters. He wasn't palatable enough for far-left Democrats, so they added Peggy Flanagan. This is a true DSA-esque candidate, and while Peggy, I will say, she's a little bit more, how do I say, intelligent and reserved in like how she puts her, which is saying something because she's done some crazy things, but she's not Francesca Hahn and saying, I hate Thanksgiving. She's a little bit more protective of her image because she is a political animal and she's decided she's going to run for statewide office one year. And this is now the opportunity where she gets to stand on her own. But she was the candidate that was able to get the DSA type people to vote for Tim Walz to make him the governor going forward. So this is how far left this individual is. I mean, she wants to abolish prisons. She wants to abolish ICE. She wants to have health care for Medicare for all. She's Bernie Sanders-esque. And yes, Bernie flew to Minnesota 3 different times now to go campaign for her, as well as Elizabeth Warren. So yeah, she's as far left as they come. And Michelle Tafoya, a very palatable voice of reason, has a real opportunity, because people have to also remember, Minnesota, we were the ones that elected Jesse Ventura. We kind of like that star-esque candidate that can kind of break through a certain mold in the state. And Michelle Tafoya, I mean, NFL sideline reporter, we all know her very well, and she also has a very reasonable, palatable voice. She has a real opportunity to actually flip this state, right?
Yeah, I think, I mean, she's incredibly likable. Just on like a, back to, I don't know if I'm 42, so I don't know if this existed in my time, certainly not necessarily in my time following politics. But like, where are the normies at? Well, I think they're in the Republican Senate race in Minnesota. When you look at Michelle Tafoya, you're like, this just seems kind of natural and kind of obvious that the people of Minnesota, the Republican nominee, she's not somebody who I feel like the GOP is shoving down the throats to make a point to the people of Minnesota or to the country about what that Republican candidate needs to be. She seems like somebody who is genuinely understands what Minnesotans, the common sense that has been so lacking in their governance. She just seems so natural to the situation.
And also a really important piece to add here for context, Annie, is also the gubernatorial race that happened in Minnesota. In the past, I would say Republicans are entirely unserious about winning in the state, but that changed on Tuesday. Because for context here as well, the Minnesota Republican endorsed candidate has never lost a statewide primary. Never. Last night, 2 nights ago now, that candidate lost in 3 different seats. A majority of the statewide seats, the endorsed candidate lost. And in particular, in the governor's race, the endorsed candidate, Kendall Qualls, came in 3rd. And the Trump endorsed candidate, Dell, came in 2nd, double digits behind in her corner from this establishment-esque style primary campaigns we have in Minnesota. And she still won with both of these aspects in there by double digits. Minnesota Republicans have never been more serious in their entire lives about winning statewide, and that really proved it for me. So when we go into the actual general election, we're going to see far right and middle of the road Republicans united, because they also understand that, and this happens to every Republican I talk to, frankly, is, well, we've already started looking at land in Tennessee. We're starting to look at South Carolina and Florida. We've already lost tens of thousands of Republican voters, and they realize this is probably the last stand. Wow. So they're very serious about the candidates they nominate. We nominate the best possible candidate in every single seat. And even more important, the Democrats nominated the worst candidates they possibly could have in every seat. So we're in a great position right now to actually upset the country. And yeah, all eyes on Minnesota.
We're speaking with Dustin Grage with on the ground in Minnesota with Town Hall, and just really incredibly plugged into what's going on in a statewide political in the environment there. And I think that when I hear you talk about Minnesota, you definitely talk about like the unique attributes that exist in Minnesota. I always hear things that are very similar to what I'm experiencing as an Illinois resident, but Minnesota seems to be a little bit further into a potential successful outcome here for common sense in the state than I think Illinois is positioned at this point. But it does provide hope, I think, for, we're such a red state, blue state. There are just fewer and fewer purple states that exist, that people are relocating. Red states are getting redder, blue states are getting bluer. So it really comes down to, if you want to flip something like in Minnesota, it really comes down to the passion and the turnout when that election ends up happening in November. What kind of funding, what kind of support financially from the GOP, from the big cats out there, is Minnesota getting to actually, I think it would be a clarion call for Republicans nationwide if we could see some success there, ground zero in Minnesota.
Yeah, no question. And all of the groups, I mean, we're talking state legislative national groups. We're talking about the attorney general's groups nationally, the governors, everything across the board, NRCC. I mean, we have Tom Emmer here also in my backyard of Minnesota. All of the groups are all in on Minnesota. We are a tier 1 target. And that's partially due with the map. Like a lot of these Senate seats, they're safe red. The Democrats are going after hard on some of these, trying to flip them, but they're viewing Minnesota as kind of safe, which is kind of funny. But yeah, we have a real opportunity. The money is coming in unlike it has never happened before. In some cases, the U.S. Senate as an example, Michelle Tafoya, she's out fundraising Peggy Flanagan right now.
Really?
So that has never, well, it's happened one time. I always have to correct myself at the last second. It has happened one time in the last 2 decades. It was Ryan Wilson. He ran for state auditor in 2022. He came within 0.3% of winning statewide. Well, who is Ryan Wilson? Also, Lisa Damoth's running mate, the candidate we just nominated for governor. So we have a running mate who came within 0.3% of winning statewide on the ticket. And we have Michelle Tafoya out fundraising Peggy Flanagan as we speak. And we're bringing in record fundraising for our state committees as well. We have such a good opportunity here in Minnesota, and I'm just so optimistic and bullish going into November.
Well, I think it deserves the national spotlight. You certainly have it here from us as fellow Midwesterners. Before we leave, I think one of the things that made Minnesota, the national interest story that it did is the many grassroots efforts that were invested in trying to root out all of the fraud that exists there. And then, of course, Nick Shirley came along and got us all Quality Learning Center hoodie sweatshirts to wear to kind of make fun of something that actually is a pretty incredible problem facing the United States. I just want to know, like, if when the fraud in Minnesota isn't the main headline story, is the effort to root it out and to squash it, to get rid of it, is it still full-fledged in the state of Minnesota?
100%. I mean, it's absolutely there. And even the internal polling on the Democrat side, Annie Frey being the specific candidate here, she did internal polling on how does the fraud affect the race in November. Candidate who lost to Peggy Flanagan. And the polling showed that we actually have a tied race in the U.S. Senate when the issue of fraud is leveraged against Peggy Flanagan. So as time progresses, those polling margins are going to close because the fraud is the number one issue. And I actually just talked to Nick a little bit ago. He was very happy about the results as well on Tuesday. In particular because David, we all know David, the guy who was with him, rooting out the daycare fraud, also endorsed Lisa Damon. That was a big endorsement going into Tuesday. But I've actually got a couple things we're working on right now. We're going to probably get Nick back out here again before November. So expect more bombshells coming out of Minnesota when it comes to fraud. Not even necessarily Medicaid fraud, but and I can't spoil it quite yet, but there's some big,
sure you can.
How do I say? There's a lot of groups that are working together, working against the system right now to help Somali immigrants get citizenship right now. So we're currently working on that investigation, and I'm actually going to be pitching it to Nick here once we get the full bit here and combine with some other Medicaid stuff. But expect some more bombshells coming out of Minnesota.
Would it be a good idea for folks to follow you on X at Greggy Dustin, just to, stay abreast of these types of things that might be released to the people?
Oh, yeah. No, we're releasing all of it all the time. And we're actually working on a children's book shortly here, too, involving the election. So
all right,
stay tuned for that. I will definitely be posting that one on X.
Well, you cover all the bases, and I am so grateful that you're able to come here and give us that firsthand account. Of course, there's lots of articles I can read, and there's election results that we can cover, but I know how important it is to talk to the people who are doing that work and who were doing it a long time before the national news comes in and says, hey, this looks like it's a story. And Dustin, you're absolutely one of them. Thank you for being with us today. And the second that you're going to release that info, send me a message and we'll get you back on the show.
Absolutely.
Take care.
Awesome, Annie. We'll chat later. Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Dustin Grage, follow him on X at Greggy Dustin, Grage. Dustin's pretty self-explanatory on